Good afternoon. We are very appreciative of being able to welcome and spend some quality time with Lucy Autrey Wilson, who worked for Lucasfilm from 1974 to the early 2000s. Welcome, Lucy.
Thank you.
And again, thank you for taking time out of your day to have this little Q&A with me. Lucy, you had the distinct honor of being the first permanent employee of Lucasfilm when you were hired as a bookkeeper in 1974. Just as a reference for our viewers, in 1971, THX 1138 was released and American Graffiti in 1973. If you can, please take us back to that time. Where'd you read about the position? Did George Lucas have any say in your hiring? Thank you.
Okay, I was in La Jolla. I was working in a trailer at the Scripps Institute of Oceanography machine shop. I was really like an AP clerk. I decided I wanted to move to Northern California because I was partying too much down there, and I thought I needed to get serious about life and a career. And I'd met my future husband. I thought we should both move someplace north. And I had a sister who lived up here. So I don't think they ever posted the position. I called my sister and said, I want to move to Northern California. Do you know anybody who's looking for, a bookkeeper / assistant? And she said yes, because she worked for George Lucas and Francis Coppola's accountant, Richard Tong. And she had heard that George Lucas was possibly looking for a bookkeeper. So I said, who's George Lucas? Then I thought, oh, American Graffiti. I like that movie. That would be, maybe interesting. So I applied, and then I drove up to LA and interviewed with him and Gary Kurtz, and George hardly said a word. And then I was hired, mainly because George liked Richard Tong, and Richard Tong recommended me because my sister was doing a really good job for him. So he figured I might be good at something. Who knows? He never even met me.
So we have to thank your sister for being.
Yes, she reminded me every year for years.
Sure she does.
You owe me, Lucy, she would say. Yes.
That's quite fascinating, because back then, it was really just starting up to be what it is now. And, nobody had an idea that it would be such a phenomenon and that it would touch so many people. So in 1974, George Lucas created a rough draft screenplay for what was called then The Star Wars. There was no Luke Skywalker. There was just a general called Anakin, and Han Solo was still a green-skinned monster with gills.
Right. Well, I don't think so.
Because
when I typed the script, Luke Skywalker was in it. Han Solo was in it.
Do you remember when you typed that script?
Well, that was one of my first jobs when I got up there in the September of 74. Bunny Alsop worked for Gary Kurtz there. And she said, here, Lucy, I'm handing this over to you now to type. And I was like, I was a very good typist, because they didn't have computers then. It was an IBM Selectric typewriter. But as far as I recall, most of what ended up in the movie was
what you typed.
Yeah, although I know he was still researching and writing.
Yeah, well, he finished the final script actually January 1st, 1976, and filming started in March of the same year. How did your role change within that time frame when you let's say first started typing the draft, and by the time and then when he started filming?
Well, they filmed overseas and left me there, so I was pretty much the only Lucas person, and I was up north.
Yeah.
They had offices at a bungalow in LA, but I think they used to just go down there. There wasn't anybody there really. And Michael Ritchie and Matt Robbins and Hal Barwood were in the offices with me, so I knew them more than I knew George and Gary, and they went off to make the movie.
Mhm.
So nothing really changed until the movie came out and was a smash hit, and then things really started to change after that.
Yeah. So when the movie became such a hit, I mean, right off, pretty much from the start, when it was released in May of '77, did you said a lot of things changed? I guess more people get hired, and then it just kind of exploded with everything. The toys coming out, and I can imagine it was a pretty wild time.
It was crazy.
No doubt.
It was crazy. If I wore anything that said Lucasfilm or Star Wars, or any people would chase me down the street. I mean, everywhere you went, it was Star Wars, Star Wars, Star Wars everywhere.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So during the filming of the original trilogy, you mentioned you didn't go overseas. Did you go overseas when Empire was filmed or Return of the Jedi? Did you have any exposure to those filming locations or the sets?
I used to go down to ILM once in a while and go down to LA to the offices.
Mm-hmm.
And they filmed some stuff in Northern California, but the only thing I remember was something that they did in the front yard at Parkway. I didn't go on a set until the prequels. Then I went to Australia. I went to Italy also.
So for Phantom Menace?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Australia probably for Attack of the Clones.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Italy was probably very nice. The filming location there on the lake was probably.
It wasn't on the lake. It was inland. It was at that castle, that palace.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was amazing. Actually, you had these great looking Italian guys, who were the I guess what were the stormtroopers or something, and then they that was neat. And then they, it was a real palace, and then they put all this stuff up to make it look futuristic. So
yeah, Star Warsy. So again, 1974 you were hired. Let's go forward 15 years. So the fateful year of 1989. It has been 5 years since Jedi came out, Return of the Jedi. The Kenner toys were gone disappeared from the bargain bins. The droid cartoons and Ewok cartoons and movies were long gone, 3 years or so. We call that the dark times of Star Wars. So you then became director of publishing in the late 80s, and you established a program where you worked on more than 1,500 titles, magazines, comics, novels,
music too. I did the soundtracks also.
Even better. In comes Timothy Zahn. Okay, he received a call from his editor and said, "Hey, stop what you're doing. Lucasfilm wants you to write Star Wars." Do you remember that period of when this all really first started?
Mm-hmm. Well, whoever thought it would be, who thought that would end up being what it was? Yeah. I always wanted to be in publishing, but it took a long time to get there. I didn't want to be in New York. So, they were only letting me do it because I don't think they thought it was going to do much of anything.
Right. They were wrong.
They were wrong. I mean, thankfully it was Timothy Zahn, but I mean, Betsy Mitchell was the editor then at Bantam.
Yeah.
I made the deal with Bantam after getting out of the deal at Ballantine, because Ballantine had a first negotiation, but they weren't really interested, and I wasn't really interested in them at that point. And Betsy sent me 3 authors. I can't remember who the other 2 were. And Timothy Zahn's original novel read like a Star Wars novel. Mm-hmm. So I thought, well, he'd be perfect because he's already practically writing Star Wars.
Right.
The only thing that he always did, and I tried to get him to change it, but it didn't work, was George never used alien sounding names. He wrote it in English. Basically, it was, and Timothy Zahn, like a lot of science fiction writers, likes to use really difficult made up alien names. And I was like, can't you just, use regular names? But no. But otherwise, it was like as if he was born to write Star Wars, really.
He's still in the game. And to this day,
Yeah.
characters like, obviously, like, Grand Admiral Thrawn is still being used today.
Yeah, he did a great, he's a really good writer.
Yeah.
And Betsy Mitchell in the beginning also was a brilliant editor. We were really lucky that she was where she was at Bantam, and that, Bantam was really enthusiastic about it, because I didn't even know until I went through the files that the editor there, the publisher there had been trying to get the rights for years, but nobody at Lucasfilm had ever written back to him.
Okay.
Because everybody was really happy with the relationship with Valentine, but it had kind of run its course, so it was a lot of luck, I would say.
Yeah. And
picking good people.
That you did. Speaking of picking people, so I have this book right here, Shadows of the Empire. You picked this guy's name right here.
Yes.
Prince Xizor.
Yes.
Were there other names in the competition, or was that pretty much what you first came up with?
I first came up with it, so yeah. I had an old Portuguese boyfriend, because I lived in Europe for a couple of years. And in Portuguese, the X has a sh sound. Do you speak any Portuguese or anything?
I do not know.
Arigato. Yeah. So I thought it just sounded neat, the sh sound. So that's where it came from.
Yeah. So the storylines that were developed, I guess, Timothy Zahn created, again, this huge universe within himself, within itself, things revolving around Grand Admiral Thrawn. Did you approve all these, I guess, character names and storylines, or who did that?
We approved everything.
Yeah, and who was all involved in that?
Well, in the beginning, it was Sue. I hired Sue to work for me to help do the editorial, and then that became her. She was a really good editor. She was growing into it at that point in time, but we approved everything. And then George had, when I wanted to do Star Wars, my boss Howard Rothman had asked George if that was okay, if I could just do that, and he said, yeah, as long as we did after Return of the Jedi and not before.
Okay.
So that was the only direction we had at that point. So we kind of just went with it. I think West End Games had already done all this stuff, so we kind of had to.
Yeah.
Sue used to more call them up all the time saying, can we do this or that, or are we contradicting something? Because from the beginning, I had observed Star Trek. They kept changing their thing over and over because they had so many books. But I thought one way to differentiate Star Wars from Star Trek was to maintain a continuity. So we tried to do that from the very beginning.
This is a big plus when it comes to the Star Wars universe. There are always exceptions, but then these get retconned to make sense. But the continuity, like you said, was always great to see. You read one book and then the next one comes out and that might reference the book prior. So you have it's like a continuous story, just like you said. And to this day, it's still being done, which is
that's because there's now a database of all that stuff, that when I hired Leland to do that, because after a while nobody could remember. We even had a group of people. I remember one of the guys I met, people who were big fans, who were big readers, there was a group where we would send the draft novels out to get all of their input to see if they caught anything. So it wasn't just us and Bantam and the author. It was also this other group of people in West End Games. A lot of people were saying, you can't do that because so-and-so already died and whatever, was challenging.
Yeah. Good. Leland is a good friend of our group, and I didn't know that you hired him, but that's interesting.
Yeah, I hired him, and it's amazing sometimes when you hire the absolute perfect person for the job.
Yes, the keep of the Holocron. Yep.
Yeah.
So, so you mentioned you went to Australia, so that was 2001. I'm guessing when Attack of the Clones was filmed. Did you and then you retired from Lucasfilm when exactly?
I forget when I retired.
Did the movie already come out, the Attack of the Clones?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. How were you? What was the decision to retire? Did you just think, okay, this is a good time to stop, or?
It was George's decision.
Okay.
It's because at that point I had left Lucasfilm. I was just working for George. I was doing books that he wanted to have published.
Okay.
And it was just me. It was like incredibly difficult, I have to say. So I was doing that, and I didn't realize that he was actually thinking of retiring. But one day he told me that he was gonna he was thinking of retiring. He was gonna retire.
Mm-hmm.
So he was gonna retire me. So so I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm glad he retired me though, because people who never know when to quit,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they just work forever, and all, I am super happy. I mean, at first it was a kind of a shock because it was earlier than I was, it was 10 years ago, actually. Now that I wasn't thinking I would not be working that early. But I'm thrilled that I actually got out when I did. I mean, because that, the company was so big then, and then it got sold to Disney, and I liked it better when it was smaller, I mean.
Sure.
Yeah.
So did you participate in that move to the Presidio? Is that what you were?
No, I never had to go.
Okay.
Fortunately, because it was a terrible commute anyway from where I live. Okay. But I was still out. We'd been at Big Rock Ranch, and I went back to Skywalker, and just worked there.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful scenery. So what do you do now in your free time?
So I have so many hobbies. I mean, I paint, I make fabric art, I do photography, I play the piano, I cook. I love life. Yeah.
Good. That's good. I like what you said about, not people not knowing when to quit, I guess, or when to retire. But
right.
Despite the sudden retirement that was brought upon you, I guess you recovered quickly and well, and like you said, enjoyed.
Yeah, it takes a while. You think, oh, I should have, could have, would have.
Sure.
And then you go, wow, total freedom to do whatever. I think a lot of people don't have anything that they want to do, so they go back to work. But there's so much stuff I want to do. It's like unending.
It sounds like you're busy, but also fulfilled.
Yeah, it's great.
Good. Well, Lucy, unless you have anything else to add or ask me a question or comment on anything else, I again would like to give you big thanks for taking your time to chat with me and to give us a little insight of how it was back then and your career path. So thank you again.
Thank you for inviting me. And I have to say, working with Star Wars fans was one of the absolute best part of my jobs.
Great to hear that.
Exceptional group of people, I have to say.
Thank you. Have a good day. Thank you.
Thanks.